All right, welcome, guys, to podcast number 3. This has been kind of a great learning experience for me. I love talking to people and I love interacting face to face. This whole thing about getting in front of a camera and recording my voice and all that stuff is completely brand new to me. What I want to do today is we're going to talk a little bit about chiropractic myths. And there are 10 of them that I listed. I think we're going to tackle 5 of them today. And so as we go through this list, of course, the information is not going to be comprehensive necessarily, and a lot of it's going to be my opinion, based on my experience, my understanding, and my education. And so as we go through this, if you have questions about any of this stuff, feel free to post about it. Leave a comment or send me a message through Facebook, or just, you can call and talk to me at the office as well. But there are 5 myths that I want to talk about today. First is that chiropractors are not real doctors. Second is chiropractic is dangerous. Third, adjustments are painful. 4, once you start going, you have to go forever. And number 5, chiropractic is expensive. So myths or misconceptions, I don't know. Some of that may all be relative too. So let's dive into this. Now, the first one is chiropractors are not real doctors. Now, this I'm not really that passionate about. Like, if people want to call me Dr. Erickson, that's fine. If they don't, I have patients come in here and they call me Spencer. I always introduce myself as Dr. Erickson. I went to school for a lot of years, and the degree that I received was Doctor of Chiropractic from what was then called Western States Chiropractic College. It's now called University of Western States, located in Portland, Oregon, and it is an accredited chiropractic college. And so the degree that I received was Doctor of Chiropractic. So as far as education goes, it's very much, classroom hours are very much on par with medical doctors. My understanding is that chiropractors typically have more classroom hours in the 3rd and 4th year, just because medical students are off doing clinicals and they're doing rotations and all the stuff that I don't really understand because I didn't do that. We did clinic while we were also doing classroom hours. And so it didn't conflict. And so we weren't in remote locations. Our clinic was right at the student health center on campus. So it was a much different experience. But we received some additional stuff like nutrition and some stuff that I know medical doctors they don't really that's not standard curriculum in medical school. So, like I said, I'm not real passionate about that particular myth. If people want to call me Dr. Erickson, or if people don't, then it's not going to hurt my feelings. I'm just who I am, and just going to roll forward no matter what. Now, second myth. This one is interesting to me. It's called, and this myth is that chiropractic is dangerous. Now, years ago, I guess there are a few different ways to tackle this one, but I believe that years ago there was a misconception that chiropractors caused strokes. There's an artery that goes up through the neck, actually through the bones of the neck, and it comes out the very top, and then it circles up and goes into the base of the skull. And that artery can have problems, and there have been cases where chiropractors have been sued because of that artery being damaged. Now, I actually have a really interesting experience that goes similar to this. Now, I've never had a patient have a problem in my office with that. But I know it does happen. It happens. I really wanted to learn about it. I was summoned by the state of Utah to participate in a pre-litigation panel. So basically what happened was there was a chiropractor and a patient. The patient came in and he got adjusted. He had a full exam and everything. He didn't get x-rays because they didn't do x-rays at that office. Some offices don't do x-rays and some do. I think that x-rays are important. But he didn't do x-rays. And the patient had an event on the table right after his adjustment. And so he, of course, he sought a lawyer and he was suing the chiropractor. To let that go to trial, first it had to go through a pre-litigation hearing to see, if the case had merit. If the case had merit, then it would have proceeded. I was called in as an expert witness, and basically it was completely random. It's not because I had special training or anything like that. I'm licensed with the state of Utah. They pulled my name out of a hat and they said, Dr. Erickson, we need you to come up here on this date, or else you're going to get in trouble. And so I was like, oh, I guess we're going to go up and do that. So it was really interesting. I went up to the same building that the licensing board is in, or DOPL, Department of Public Licensing, is in. It's the same building, just a little room in there. And there was a nurse, and there were a few lay people, people that didn't have degrees, and there were some other professionals, and there was the guy making the complaint, and the chiropractor and their lawyers, and so it was really an interesting experience for me, and I wanted to go in prepared. So not only did I want to understand, the physiology and pardon me, understand really well the problem that is being faced by both sides. I'm not a doctor because I don't care about people. I want people to, I just want people to get better. I want people to be healthy. And so I also took a personal interest in it because I'm a chiropractor. And if that sort of event happens in my office on my table, then I want to know, is there any way that I can mitigate that, or what is the real deal with that? And so I did some research, and it didn't take a long time. You can study this. You can look stuff up online real fast. I actually have the affidavit of service, and this is several years ago. Yeah, 2014. So April 2014. But there's some legal stuff that came with it, just to say, okay, this is what this whole thing's about, and it showed me where to park and all that stuff. And I got background on the case itself. Now I'm not going to show you that to you because there's some confidential information on that I'm not going to divulge, of course. But there's a study. I believe this is the correct study. Yes. So it's a really interesting study. It's called Risk of Vertebrobasilar Stroke and Chiropractic Care, Results of a Population-Based Case Control and Case Crossover Study. So it's a long title. Basically, it's just saying, at what risk are you for going to the chiropractor for having a stroke at the base of the neck, or base of the skull? So what they did is in Canada, of course, it's socialized medicine. Now, the nice thing about socialized medicine is everything's trackable. Every single diagnosis is trackable. Every date of service is trackable. All of the events that people go to the doctor for receive a diagnosis code, and there's a huge database, of course, that everything goes into. And so what they did is there's a very particular diagnosis code for this type of event, this type of injury or stroke. And so what they did is they looked up the frequency of those events over a certain number of years, and then they traced that to who was what type of provider the person sought care from, and then they basically said, okay, is it more risky? Does it seem more risky going to the medical doctor or going to the chiropractor for this particular thing? Now, I don't want to make this too complicated. I want it to be pretty simple, and it is fairly simple. What they found was, and this basically the statistics that they came up with, the objective of the study, to investigate associations between chiropractic visits and vertebrobasilar artery or VBA stroke, and to contrast this with primary care physician or PCP visits and the same type of event. And so if that stroke happens, then they can trace it back to say, okay, what provider did they visit and how long ago? So really interesting. The results, here's the first line. It says there were 118 VBA strokes hospitalized in a population of more than 100 million person years. So you can kind of average that out to see what the overall risk is. But 100 million person years was the length of time ultimately that was studied for how many people they looked at. 118. Let's see. Results were similar in the case control and case crossover analyses. So basically what it says, the increased risks of VBA stroke associated with chiropractic and primary care visits is likely due to patients with headache and neck pain from a VBA dissection seeking care before their stroke. So ultimately what they found is that they traced them back, and it was almost exactly the same number of people seeking care from chiropractors and seeking care from medical doctors. And then within 2 weeks, they had that type of stroke. So what happens is, and this is it's all in the document, but what happens is, if that artery has enough nasty stuff in it, like it's got plaquing and it's ready to swell, it's got a lot of inflammation in it, that's what weakens arteries. Arteries are extremely tough things. They're full of muscle and they're really, really tough things. And so by the time they're opening up and starting to split and dissect is what it's called, tear open, by the time that happens, there's been a long history typically. And so when it starts to happen, of course, there are nerves in that artery. And so if it starts to split open like that, it's going to hurt. we're not used to feeling artery pain. And so what happens is the brain says, oh my gosh, your neck hurts. You have neck pain or you have a headache. And so it's referring pain. And so if you have a headache or neck pain, where are most people going to go? They're going to go to the doctor or they're going to go to the chiropractor. Now we just talked about doctors and chiropractors. They're going to go to the medical doctor, their primary care, or they're going to go to the chiropractor. So what they found was that people sought care basically the same frequency. And so what they ultimately decided was, we found no evidence, this is the last sentence of the conclusion, we found no evidence of excess risk of VBA stroke associated with chiropractic care compared to primary care. So if people come across and they say, oh, chiropractors cause strokes, well, then they also have to come across and say, well, medical doctors cause strokes, because it happens at the exact same frequency. And so what happened with this particular litigation, pre-litigation hearing, was that I went in and I pulled up this study and I had a couple copies of it. I had one in big text and one in little text, and I had some stuff highlighted. And I said, all right, because people started looking to me because I was the expert chiropractor. And so I said, all right, now I understand, because they were pleading their case. They're saying, all right, this is what happened, and there wasn't consent, and all this. There was a lot of other details to this. And I said, all right, this is probably the clearest explanation that I can make for the incidence of chiropractic care and this type of stroke. And so I literally just passed this study around the table. And the nurse especially, everyone was looking at this nurse. She was obviously experienced. She was a little bit older gal, obviously experienced, and had a great amount of education. She spoke very, very well too. And so she obviously knew what she was talking about. And so she's reading through this, and I can't remember everybody else. She made an impression on me for some reason. But there were some other professionals there, and as soon as we started reading through this, and I was like, this is what happened. And then they started coming up with things, and they looked at this particular gentleman's history, and he smoked like 2 packs a day for like 40 years. And that is a really high risk factor, a really important risk factor for arterial disease. And so his lifestyle was terrible. He was making terrible lifestyle choices. And, there was a lot. What it started to do is it started to shift this sort of blame. That's all litigation is about. It's about blame. And so he says, all right, all the blame is on this chiropractor, because I went to the chiropractor with a headache, and after that, my neck, or the artery in my neck, started to go, and I had to go to the hospital. And he was regaining a lot of function. It was super scary, and I don't take anything away from that. It was a terrible event for him to have to go through. But immediately he's like, oh my gosh, this chiropractor. And of course you go to the ER with that, and the ER doc is going to say it was the chiropractor, because he's never read this study. He doesn't know. And so he's going to say it's the chiropractor. And so you need to call a lawyer and get litigation going. And so all of this started, this mindset of, oh my gosh, it's all the chiropractor's fault, started to shift to, well, we also have a study here saying that this is just going to happen. This happened, they recorded 818 strokes out of 100 million person years. And so, yes, it's an event that just does spontaneously happen. And we know that some people, when they get that, are going to go to the medical doctor, and some people are going to go to the chiropractor, and basically the results are the same. They're going to have that same event. And so it started to shift the mindset in the room onto his lifestyle. Is he taking care of his body in a way that his arteries should never have done this? And it turns out, no, he was not taking care of his body appropriately. And so, of course, things are going to break down. And that's a really important thing that broke down for that gentleman. And, when it really came down to it, of course, I have a lot of empathy for him. I didn't want him to have to go through that, but he did go through it. And if there's going to be blame assigned, it has to be assigned appropriately. Really, it should just be from, it's tough. It's tough to move from that point going forward and just say, all right, that's cool. There's going to be some anger, and there's going to be obviously a lot of really strong feelings, and, some opinions thrown around that may not be super well informed. And so it turned out at the end of that particular pre-litigation hearing that they said, no, this case doesn't have merit. And it was really interesting to me, because it was actually the other healthcare professionals in the room and the lay individuals that were making the call. And they're like, no, I don't really feel like this should go to trial. And of course, we all cast a vote. All of us had an important vote. But I also want to tell you that if I felt that the doctor was negligent, I would have been honest about it, because you have to be honest about stuff like that. That's why I'm a doctor, because I care about people and I want people to get better. And so, going through that experience was really important. That's why I've kept this file for so long, it's basically exactly the same as the day that I brought it home from that pre-litigation hearing, because that was a really important turning point for me, to say, you know what? Sometimes bad things happen. I'm going to do the very best that I can to be as specific as I can and not wrench on people's heads, and just be very specific about the way that I adjust the spine. So, and that's been a very important turning point in my career, because that actually, that specificity, that improved ability to adjust exactly what needs adjusting, got better and better and better over time. And that's really helped me get better results for my patients. And so this thing was super scary for me to go to. I was terrified, but having been through the experience and being able to look back on it now 6 years ago, 6 or almost 7 years ago, what a powerful turning point for me. And so, as far as other dangers, so the myth is that chiropractic is dangerous. And of course, I just spent a lot of time talking about stroke, because I think there are a lot of misconceptions where, oh man, my aunt's cousin's, brother-in-law, I know he went to a chiropractor and that he had a stroke. And those, I've heard those stories before, and it's like, well, I don't know anything else other than what you're telling me. And so having real information from a very, very well uh, looked into study, a really deep study, gives me a lot of confidence as far as that goes, that I'm not going to hurt people. That people generally are hurting themselves. It's a lifestyle thing. And so what I can do to mitigate the risk is just be as specific and gentle as I can in my adjustments, which I always try to do, and then just take care of people to the best of my ability. And so, as far as other dangers with chiropractic, I have heard of chiropractors breaking ribs, people that are just really super heavy-handed. Uh, it's possible, I guess, to sprain and strain. I've had some really, really rough adjustments from other chiropractors before. I hate that. I've had chiropractors, it just feels like they're trying to remove my head from my body. And I just don't think that's appropriate. It's not necessary to use that much force. Again, the more specificity I have, the gentle I can be. So those are really my goals when I'm adjusting people. Now that brings us to the next one here. I'm trying to think if there are any other real dangers with chiropractic. Really, it's just, if the doc is just too rough. If you've been in a car accident and you go to somebody who's really rough, you can just tell. I've had people get stiff and sore after an adjustment. That's not an injury. That's a lot of times we're just breaking up scar tissue in the body. That's just the body's natural healing taking place, and inflammation, natural body processes going on. If you feel like there are other questions you have on dangerous, let me know. I'd love to talk, speak more to those things. But that brings us to the third thing, the third myth, which adjustments are painful. So, like I said, I've had very painful adjustments before. I don't like them. I don't like them at all. I had one gal, oh man, she left me a review, and I remember exactly every moment of that adjustment where I adjusted her neck, and she was so locked up. And I looked at her x-rays, and I was like, oh my gosh, you have so much damage in your neck. It's just been sitting in there and getting worse and worse over the years without appropriate movement. Things just degenerate, and we get scar tissue, and everything just starts trying to fuse together. And her neck was just kind of a horrible sight on the x-ray. And so I went in that first adjustment, and I was like, boom, and it released, and I was like, that's great. And she said, ow, and I was like, I am so sorry that hurt. I hate it when neck adjustments hurt. And she went home that night, and I guess I didn't explain well enough the reasons why. And she went home that night, she never came back. And she left me a review that wasn't very positive. And I get it, it's not fun. But sometimes there are situations where if you neglect that body for so long, it takes a little bit more work to get it moving properly. Sometimes it's less comfortable. But I don't know if adjustments painful. A lot of times it's just getting put in the wrong position, or being twisted too hard, or being pushed on too hard. Those kinds of things. And really, you have to find a chiropractor that you love to go to. I prefer somebody who's gentle, because I don't need my head torn off. I'm easy to adjust. I have patients that literally say, adjust me as hard as you can. And I'll give them what I got, and they're like, no, just a little bit more. But that's not typical for people that come in here. Most people just want to have a nice, quick, specific adjustment and then get on with their day without being like, oh man, I'm feeling pretty rough after that adjustment today. All right. Fourth one, now we're getting a little bit longer than my other podcast here. I'm going to see if I can push through here. The fourth one is, once you start going, you have to go forever. Now, I'm going to be honest with this. I don't understand where this came from, and I don't understand the mentality or the physiology behind that. If somebody can explain to me the physiology of why, once a joint starts moving better, that you have to continue to get adjusted for the rest of your life, like it's a law of nature, then let me know. I'm not really sure exactly how that works. But that's kind of the myth that I've heard that before. But man, I just don't know how that would work. I guess it loosens up the joints. We want our joints to be mobile enough that they can get through a normal range of motion, and an adjustment just takes it just a teeny tiny bit past that normal range. It's called the paraphysiological space. That's when we get that cavitation pop sound. People call cracks and stuff, but or a click, and that's all an adjustment requires. And so if we do that, we release some of the pressure in the joint, and it's a big reset in the nervous system. We'll talk more about that in a later video, later podcast. But I don't understand. So please let me, if you have some insight on that, please let me know. The last one is chiropractic is expensive. This is the last myth. Now, expense is relative. So, feel what you want to feel about that. And I don't have any problem with people saying, yeah, you're too expensive when I come to you and you want me to come a bunch of times. Well, and this is kind of where things are up to the individual. Not only can somebody say, well, I don't want to come in this many times, but I just want to, if we find a problem that really needs a lot of attention, a lot of adjustments to get through and rehabilitate, well, it just is what it needs. It needs what it needs. But if it's hurting, you're like, well, I don't want to do that necessarily, the plan that you recommended, but can I come a few more times till it feels better? Yes, absolutely. Well, then it's not so expensive, right? Because you're treating that like an investment. It's an investment to get rid of your pain. How much would you pay to have your pain go away? And then on the same side, the same side of the token, how much would you pay to never have this problem again, right? Is that a cost or is that an investment? Is it easier to adjust a baby, a couple of times? Is that expensive, or is it more expensive to adjust an adult a whole bunch of times because it wasn't resolved when they were a baby? And so again, it's, do you want a little bit of hard now or a lot of hard later? But expense is all relative. There are cheaper chiropractors than me, for sure. They don't, a lot of times, you're not going to see the same level of detail, same level of precision and specificity, and the same amount of experience with what I do. And so I take a lot of pride in what I do, and I believe that I'm very good at it. And so I cost what I cost. If people want to go somewhere else, that's great. I know there are chiropractors that cost a lot more than I do. And so I believe that I'm also a very good value. So chiropractic being expensive is all relative. It's all in what you want to accomplish. If it's just about today and you just want to spend a little money, then just spend a little bit of money. If it's about, growing old and being very highly functional throughout the rest of your life, then, yeah, it can cost a little bit more. But again, I consider that to be an investment. Cost is about spending money for no reason, but investment is about spending money for a great reason. So anyway, that's 5. If you have any questions or questions, I always say questions or concerns, let me know. If you have any questions or if you have any opinions on stuff like that, let me know. I'm going to be posting this video pretty quickly here, and just post up in the comments below. And it was great talking to you about this. We have another one that we're going to do a little bit later, and about 5 more myths. And we'll see how this one goes and how we feel about that. But anyway, if you want to get a hold of me, Timview Chiropractic. Office number is 801-762-6940. That'll get you to the front desk. You can also email timpviewreception@gmail.com, really simple. Or you can just look us up on Facebook, facebook.com/timpviewchiropractic. We'll try to get a little bit more active with our Instagram, which is @timpviewchiropractic. And I hope you have a great day. Thanks for watching.